freshman class we've seen in state's history. Last year, or 2 years ago, was the largest. This one's even bigger. 45 new legislators out of 149 legislators. That's over 30%. That's historic. The House is sitting on 73 Republicans, 26 Democrats. There's 2 missing because we had 2 resignations recently.
Sort of.
Yeah. One was a sexual harassment issue, pretty serious deal, and the other one was just a job opportunity, which is pretty standard. The Senate is sitting on 42 Republicans, 6 Democrats. Democrats slipped in both houses. A little bit of a surprise, but obviously no surprise that Republicans still have control. Speaker Charles McCall, I just wanted to say a couple words about both of these leaders. Very thrilled with our leadership that we have. Speaker McCall's from Southeast Oklahoma, Atoka, banking family, banker himself, very business-minded, very trustworthy. Senate Pro Tem, leader of the Senate, Mike Schultz is a cotton farmer from Altus area. Great guys, both of them, great gentlemen. So I'm looking forward to really great leadership there. The budget this year is about an $870 million shortfall. Last year was $1.4 billion. Very significant numbers for the state of Oklahoma. This is the 4th year of a budget shortfall in the state of Oklahoma. That's the most I've seen in my 20 plus years of being around the state government, and even researching back, I don't know that I ever found 4 years in a row. So it's a very significant era that we're facing here. Recommendations from the governor's speech yesterday that leveled a lot of people. Eliminate the sales tax on groceries, which kind of hits the municipalities pretty hard there. Eliminate corporate income tax. Sales tax modernization, which is basically a sales tax on services. That was brought up last year. It's going to be a topic that they discussed this year. Raise the cigarette tax. Increase fuel tax. She made a point that we're one of the lowest in the region, actually the lowest in the country, one of the lowest. And she wants to dedicate all that fuel tax to roads. Tax on wind energy was a very significant item in her budget, and sent the industry in a spin a little bit, a lot. Hold most agencies harmless, and however, she did say that she wanted to increase the public safety 15% because of just public protection and keeping troopers on the road. She thought that was ridiculous that we have to limit their mileage based on budget constraints. But this is actually the budget she put on all the legislators' desks yesterday, and she made reference to, she had 3 categories, a red budget, a yellow budget, and a green budget. She preferred to stay away from the yellow and red because that was a straight across the board cut to agencies varying from 7 to 11%. She didn't want to go there. And so she wanted to stay within that green category as her real budget proposal, but you got to start someplace, and that's where she started.
Can you go back to that screen?
Sure.
Before we leave here, can you expand on item number 1?
And eliminate sales tax on groceries.
Do any of these have bills that somebody is carrying right now?
No, what this will be is, it's not written up in a bill right now. What they do is they have shell bills related to the budget and
Yes.
revenue, and they keep those active throughout the process, and then they package these things together and put them in 1 or 2 bills and pass them. So you can't, on the elimination of groceries, sales tax on groceries, there's not a bill specific to that yet, or if there will be.
How do you track that personally?
I have a tracking service that I subscribe to through the Journal Record, and I'm able to tag all the bills. I've got 101 bills tagged for municipality, City of Enid. And I can set it up to send me text alerts on the most important ones as they're moving through. And periodically, in fact, I just sent Gerald an updated list that he'll send out to all the staff and council members.
We have it.
And all you have to do is click on the bill number to read the language of the bill and see the status of it. But we'll keep that fresh as possible. And I try to keep the bill list clean. I have it categorized in water, municipal issues, law enforcement.
Was that a surprise to you that that was on the list?
Groceries? Yeah. I haven't heard anybody talk about sales tax on groceries in quite a while, especially from the governor's state of the state.
Do you think she's talking just about food items, or?
Yeah, anything food items, probably.
I mean, they sell an awful lot of stuff at the grocery store that really isn't.
Yeah, that's right,
So I'm just curious as to what.
Yeah, it would just be food.
How does that affect convenience stores, Kurt?
Probably not.
A lot of small towns in northwest
Yeah.
Oklahoma only have a convenience store.
Well, and some of those convenience stores sell grocery type items, like fresh fruit even. So yeah, I'm sure there would be some kind of a code of certain items that would be taxed or not taxed.
Do you have a way of knowing how much sales tax comes from grocery stores and
No, not yet.
in Enid?
No.
It's a big item for Enid.
Yeah.
It's gotta be a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
We can look them up, I think, through the confidential reports. They're not available to everybody, but I think they're by a certain code, and I don't remember what that
Yeah.
code's called, NAICS or something.
now,
That'd be
in
interesting.
theory though, what she's trying to do is give the sales tax break to the citizens in this category, but make up the difference for you guys in this category. Because when you put a sales tax on services, that's what this is. Then you're able to charge that sales tax for municipalities.
I have been told that if the state cannot collect sales tax on a specific item,
Mhm.
then the municipalities cannot.
That's
also.
correct. You're correct about that. If the
And
state,
is that in one of our
it's in statute
statutes?
somewhere that if they take away a state tax, then you no longer can charge an Enid sales tax on that item. You have to mirror whatever the state does.
So the sales tax modernization, that's tax on attorneys, accountants,
Plumbers,
plumbers,
everything,
electricians, all that.
everything, yeah.
I've also been told that that is something that is controlled by the municipality and not by a law within the state. You know if that's true?
Well, no, I don't have a good answer for that. I know that there was a controversy last year when they studied this because there was a list of exemptions where the state had exempted the sales tax, and then there was a list of things that just didn't need an exemption because they weren't taxed. And there was starting to be controversy with those two different lists.
Somebody will be finding out.
Well, I'm sure they'll dig up the file from last
And
year.
Andrew, we probably need to check an ordinance to see if we have an ordinance that
Yeah,
allows us to continue to, because the way the articles have been written is that they can exclude it and it doesn't affect cities and municipalities, but I don't want us to be behind the curve.
Yeah,
Now-
we don't have an ordinance
We
that
do
would allow
not?
us to tax. We tax what the state taxes.
To
We tax what the state taxes. So if they create an exemption for example, for groceries, we would not be taxing that.
Well, we really
Now-
can't, because I mean, it all kind of, I mean, the mechanism, we're not direct collectors of sales tax. We don't manage the receipts from the stores. It all runs through OTC.
state treasurer won't accept it.
now when I line all these up, on the sales tax increase side, like, on the services, cigarettes, wind, fuel tax, when I line those up, you can't pass them all. Probably the one that is most vulnerable is this cigarette tax. That'd be the catalyst or the litmus test, if you will. If they can pass that, or a tax on beer, I think that was tried last year. If they can pass that, then it might open the door for these others to pass it. But this one would be the easiest for the legislature to do. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll talk a couple water issues. First of all, I was going to call out and congratulate Rob Stallings. If you didn't know, he had just been appointed to the water board. Huge, significant board. I think it's one of the most important boards in the state, and I was glad to see an Enid fellow who understands the industry to be part of that. He'll be confirmed later this session. It's a very easy process. It's not like you see in DC. If there's any squabbling, it takes place before the appointment in Oklahoma. And that just, Rob is, he's squeaky clean, so he was easy appointment. His term would expire in 2024, so he's got a lot of work ahead of him. Water issues, there wasn't a ton of water issues this year. Years past, like 5 years ago, I had 80 plus water bills. This year, not so many. House Bill 2280 by O'Donnell declares wastewater a commodity. What he's trying to do here is be able to start selling wastewater. And I've seen these wastewater and gray water type issues kind of popping up the last couple of years, so that's going to be an issue that gets talked about. I thought this one was interesting. House Bill 1537 by Dunnington, he's from Oklahoma City, creates a revolving fund that will be used by the Oklahoma Water Resources Board to encourage efficient water use among municipalities. But the main emphasis of this bill was to require commercial irrigation systems to have accurate water metering. That's the ag guys, the ag irrigation. You already have meters on your wells. Agriculture doesn't. This issue's been tried before in years past, didn't go anywhere, but here it is again. And I think the ag industry is probably going to have something to say about it, but it's an issue that's probably going to pop up and be perennial. Law enforcement, these two bills are the same. Senate Bill 345 and House Bill 1374 allows municipalities to create public safety protection districts. And if you notice here, I'll try to put it down at the bottom. I'll put them in my notes on your bill tracking too, if I find out if there's a city requesting this. This was a City of Tulsa request. In fact, I just ran into the Tulsa lobbyist at the Capitol just a few hours ago, and he asked me if we were on board with this. And I said, I don't think there's a problem, but here it is. For you all to review. I think it's probably some good
Hey Kurt,
legislation.
that specifically, is that the bills that relate to a vote of the people to use ad valorem
Yeah,
tax to help
right
pay for
here.
public safety,
Yeah,
which is
it looks
fire,
like
police?
it's not any kind of a state grant or anything like that. It's probably some kind of funding mechanism within. So, careful what you ask for, because somebody's got to pay for it. But nevertheless. I thought this was interesting too. House Bill 1719 by Representative Moore makes an assault upon certain municipal officers a felony. This was a City of Edmond request bill, and I'm sure they had some kind of a issue there that was a catalyst for this. But
Rabble rousers in Edmond.
yeah, it must be. Felonies are hard to come by in today's environment in Oklahoma legislature. For several years, they were pushing out felony convictions on certain crimes like, just hotcakes, giving them away. It's a little harder to get a felony attached to some kind of an offense these days. And so I could see trial attorneys trying to work on this to keep from having so many felonies. Because there's quite frankly a lot of felonies out there on crimes that maybe shouldn't have been. But
Does this stipulate any difference if a municipal officer is committing the felony on another municipal officer?
that's a good question. Just basically
It's a defense.
assaulted on the
It's a
certain
defense.
municipal officers, so I'm sure the details might be in there somewhere. Real ID Act, and I know the Air Force Base is very interested in this.
About time.
And I know that the construction industry is concerned about this. All of the vendors that go in and out of the gates of an Air Force base, and we have plenty of them in Oklahoma bases. This is our two House members tackling this issue, and I just visited a little bit by text with Osborne today. Asked her if she's going to fast track this out as quickly as possible. She said yes. When I look at it, the quickest they can do it with staying within the guidelines of the legislature is getting a governor's signature on week 7. I think would be the quickest they could do it, unless they do something to push it out even sooner than that. But this was mentioned in the governor's state of the state. It's a big issue with her. It's a big issue with a number of legislators. Last year, and perhaps the year before, Oklahoma just ignored it. They wanted it to go away. They didn't think it was something they had to deal with. And now they're facing the realities of it has to be done. And I believe, from what I'm hearing, that all of the details have been taken care of, and that you know, the agreements have been made and they just need to push it through the process. I don't think it's going to be amended or anything like that.
Where are those two representatives from?
Osborne, she is from Mustang, and Eccles is from Oklahoma City. Osborne is the new Appropriations and Budget Chairman of the House. So you know that it's going to be funded. She'll take care of that. And Eccles is the floor leader of the House. So it's pretty much leadership driven.
Where your notes mentioned that Representative Cleveland was involved with it too,
Cleveland? Possible.
unless
Yeah, unless there was another bill in there.
House Bill 2244.
Okay.
It's another.
Oh, it's another bill.
2244.
And you see a lot of companion bills out there, but I would imagine
That's
one of
another.
those
That's
two.
another different deal,
Yeah,
Kurt.
yeah. Okay, when I visited with Gerald the other day, he was always concerned about the revenue, so these next few slides are dedicated to Gerald. Because it's, you know, you gotta have money to run cities. House Bill 1856, again, the A and B Chairman Osborne creates a task force with appointments by the governor, speaker, and Senate Pro Tem to study the tax code and budget reforms. Oklahoma City requested this bill, and the city of Oklahoma City, and I believe it's going to be very specific to how cities are funded. And so I think that's just going to be a work in progress, and that's their number one of their top issues to get through this year to start that process. Senate Bill 337 by Holt requires an annual sales report from internet vendors that do not collect use tax and makes total apparent sales of more than $100,000. This is going to be phase 2, part 2 of
Caldwell's
internet
bill.
sales tax. Representative Caldwell, right here in Enid, did a fantastic job last year of ushering this legislation through. I think it failed the first time. He had to round up the votes to get it to pass. I think if memory serves right, but he did a great job. There may be a House bill out there I didn't find, but obviously Caldwell's going to be involved. There's
Isn't
no
this
doubt.
basically what Caldwell's bill required?
Well-
what's the distinction?
The distinction, and I've not seen the language, but what I hear is everything they didn't include in last year's bill that might have been controversial is going to be tried this time. To take it one more step further in trying to stiffen the.
Do you know if there are any other deals announced aside from Amazon?
No. It's funny, we talked about this the other day, and then Amazon came out with their announcement. Right?
Yeah, it's an effective March 1, right?
Yes, that's what I've seen.
Yeah.
What was that announcement, Kurt?
Amazon basically started.
Voluntary sales tax
Yeah,
collection.
Collecting sales tax on.
You know, if they double the 4%, that's only 8% of 100% that's going to file it on their 1040.
Well,
The way I look at it,
yeah.
it's a good start.
Well, this is going to be a perennial topic, you know, and I think they're just going to take the steps every year to try to firm that statute up.
I
So,
agree.
okay, this is the 331 by Holt authorizes a levy of 4.5 excise. Okay, this is your sales tax on services. And so this, when we mentioned groceries a little while ago, I didn't see a grocery bill, but there is a bill on the sales tax of services. And that's what he's attempting to do here. So it's gonna be talked about to the very end. Senate Bill 212 by Rader allows for peace officers, oh, this is a good one. Allows for peace officers authorized to make lawful arrest of a defendant to accept payments for warrants related to court costs for outstanding warrants.
Really?
I don't think this is a cash deal. This is if you want to pay now or contest, you're fine, pay later. But if they want to avoid the whole system and just pay their fine or whatever
Our law enforcement's going to love being debt collectors.
well, that's your all's call. If
Yeah.
something like this were to pass, that's your all's call. And of course, if you recall from last year, I think you can collect a use fee now too. Cities can. And I think that wasn't specific to water. But anyway, so that's out there. By the way, Senator Rader is former coach Rader of Tulsa Hurricanes. So
Okay.
he's now,
David Rader.
yeah, he's now a state senator. This won't go too far, I don't think, with you all. Senate Bill 332 by Holt, sales tax, eliminating sales tax exemption for sales to the state of a political subdivision or agency of a subdivision. Right now, you all have a sales tax exemption, right, when you buy. They're trying to take your exemption away from you. And so this would be a cost to the city, obviously, on your goods that you buy. Again, hats off to these fellas and ladies that are running the state. They're trying everything they can to find money to balance the budget, and this is just an idea that they've got out there. I don't think it'd go too far.
One recommendation for that is they could leave the exemption for the political subdivisions and then take away the exemption for the state. The state could pay themselves sales tax and us too if they wanted to on those purchases.
Yeah. Okay. Every year I see an open meeting bill, and this was the only one I saw this year. Sets a mandatory minimum time set aside for all questions at open meetings. You all do a great job. When somebody wants to speak at your open meetings, you do your best to give them time and decide how much time is necessary. It shouldn't be the state that decides how much time the city gives. So I don't think that will go too far, and they'll realize that they're getting into your business there. Senate Bill 28 by Thompson directs deposits and assessment of funds to the Oklahoma Law Enforcement Telecommunications System. I don't know what this is, but I'm sure some accountant at the city of Enid knows what this is. And OML just asked me the other day if city of Enid could put together a cost. They want to know what the cost to the city would be on Senate Bill 28.
I
So-
assume that might be related to 911 maybe, otherwise, I don't know what it's talking about.
I-
Do you know?
I'm guessing with the new tax that those funds start coming in March,
Okay.
so how they may be paid or expended in the city, is what I'm guessing.
All right. Well, if you could get somebody to crack that bill open and, see what that is. I haven't looked into it. The OML just asked me that the other day. So. Important dates. February 10th, this Friday, we're going to have our local legislators come in and visit with staff and a few commissioners and just kind of go over some of the issues at the Capitol, local updates. February 15th, State Chamber has a reception. That's a great reception at the History Center. And then February 28th, Enid Day at the Capitol, which is put together by our Chamber of Commerce, which is always a great event, and usually have meetings set aside with the Speaker and the Pro Tem of the Senate if possible. March 27th, the Northwest Oklahoma Legislative Reception. That is a fantastic reception. I'm always impressed of how many folks from small towns roll out for it, and they actually do a great job. I know this is early, but September 25th is the Enid Legislative VIP Golf Tournament that is put together by the industrial group, I always get the acronym mixed up, Britt Kissling and Company. This is something we do every other year when there's not a campaign going on to get legislators in there, and we've opened it up to agency heads and staff, and I think it's always a good connection, and we like to reserve the date as early as possible and get it on the legislators' calendars to kind of ward off other golf tournaments and/or events that might be going on. So outside of that, any questions or?
Is there a bill yet for teacher pay increase?
Okay.
Sure. We'll send that.
Yes, I'm sure there is. I want to say I've seen maybe one or more bills on teacher pay raise, and that is one of the governor's agenda items. I think a lot of people want to see a pay raise, but with $870 million shortfall, it's going to be difficult. But that was one of her items in the State of the State that she wanted to address.
Was it in her proposed budget at all?
Well, I'm sure it is.
Okay.
I'd have to look. I'm sure.
Any other questions? 9 o'clock Friday morning.
Yeah, yeah. And they're coming fresh off of visiting with some area superintendents, so we
So they'll be grumpy.
coattailed that.
Thank you, Kurt. Item 4, presented and discussed capital recovery ordinance. Is that you, Robert?
Yes, sir, Mayor. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager, audience. This is basically want to bring you up to speed on what we've been doing and looking to make some revisions to the capital recovery ordinance. The ordinance was passed a couple of years ago, and we've actually used it on sanitary sewer in one case, but it is available for use on stormwater and also on water system. First thing, to remind you that what the capital recovery ordinance does, it allows us to build and plan for the future by proceeding to get infrastructure in at a proper size that meets the needs, and also sets up a way to recover the cost proportionally based on demand or use. And this is some of the parameters that were set out in the ordinance and still in place, which is, of course, proportional cost by demand. Basically, the more of the service you need, the more you pay. We do establish a 4% inflation cost, so the cost of this structure is inflated annually for the recovery cost. Limited term for repayment. We're actually going to recommend a 12-year term, which is what we have in some of the areas. We have 20 for sanitary sewer, but we recommend a 12-year term. And the way the ordinance is set up, 5% of the costs of the funds collected are retained for administrative costs. So basically, development occurs, they have their costs for their share of the improvement, but the additional cost for the oversizing can be recovered at least up to 95% of the cost. We made some changes in the ordinance format. Originally, we had basically 3 versions of the provisions covering the 3 different areas: water, sanitary sewer, and stormwater. And they were kind of intermixed, and there was some duplication. So we want to condense, this ordinance will condense basically the requirements, the standards that's set out in the first document, and we'll have special provisions for those 3 subsections. Plus, we're adding a subsection for transportation. We have a system, I think, for addressing roads and signalization improvements. And we are making a proposed change to assess water based on 50% based on area that's being developed and 50% on demand or on meter size. And the reason is you can have a development occur such as a car wash or truck wash, very small area, but a very large water demand. So or you can have a house developed on an estate, very large acreage, but a very low water demand. So we're looking to change it to based on area and demand, on meter size is what that demand will be to help equalize that process. Okay, the capital recovery concept is the developer constructs the improvement, and it's provided for excess capacity, and then when the future users come along to make use of that improvement and tie to it, they pay proportionally based on their demand and their share of the cost. We have modified a little bit, but there still is requirements to do notification. Basically, the developer does notification 2 times, one up front. We developed the original application, and then when the final cost is determined, through notice to the property owners in the area of impact before there's final action. Okay. Developer's obligation. First, there's got to be an excess capacity provided in the infrastructure. One of those type of infrastructures, and they provide the plans, the details, cost estimates, and the map, or determine where the beneficial area is, which is approved by the commission. We approve those, of course. And then they go in and provide that excess capacity or make the improvement. The next step is approval by the commission. We have taken MAPC out of the process, or recommend taking them out. It goes to the commission for approval of the application. Then the notice is provided, as discussed earlier, to the owners of what anticipate the cost would be for future connections based on demand. And then after that notice, then there actually is a formal agreement which sets out all the parameters, what the developer will do, what he'll build, and what his estimates of cost are for the assessment. for the project, and they make the improvement. The post-development, after the improvement is in place, the developer provides his as-built plans, his record drawings, and we'd certify, he provides certification to the cost of the improvements, which would be the actual cost improvements, any right-of-way costs, engineering costs, up to 10% of the construction costs. That's the limit for engineering costs. The other are actual costs. Notice provided to the property owner of what that cost is and how that cost would be assessed, such as sanitary sewer. It's based on peak flow from the sanitary sewer system. And then the commission accepts that report, and it's filed. And then if we have a post-development occur, someone develops after the improvements in place, then they're required to provide their information on their demand or area in the case it's appropriate. And then they would pay their proportional costs based on their impact. Now, there is an exception in here. We do have currently, if utilities, water and sewer extended past a property is required to become a customer. This would, if this would exempt them from requiring to become a customer, but they can become a customer any time when they just have to pay the fees. So that's one thing to consider. Let's go back. The obligation of the city is basically still the same. It is that we assess the fee when the post-development occurs. Then we notify the developer, and we have, I think it's $1,000 on file on an annual basis. At that limit, we at least notify the developer. He files an application for payment, and then we make payment of 95% of the fees collected under that capital recovery. Again, I said we're looking at special conditions to cover the 4 areas because each one is assessed and a little differently. Sanitary, sewer, stormwater, water, and we added transportation, which is for roads and signalization. Now, sanitary sewer, the amendment basically addresses their basin map has to address the drainage area based on contours, because that's the way sanitary sewer really work. And the excess capacity is based on the sanitary sewer's peak flow capacity, gallons per minute of peak flow capacity that this system will provide. Term of 12 years, and it requires post-development to provide, of course, their report and their analysis of what their peak flow provisions are. And that works pretty good on plats, subdivisions, site plans. Drainage reports are required, and they can provide these additional analysis. On single lot development, that may be a little cumbersome. We have in the ordinance these pre-established flow rates for these living units, single-family resident, or if you have transit living units, such as, and you have mobile homes and apartments, schools, assembly halls, and hospitals. This is basically like hotels and motels. We have established through historical records what their impact is based on those units. These are gallons per day of flow rate that would be anticipated from those units. Helps for, if you're a resident come in, they don't need to do a major study, they defines that. Stormwater special conditions, again, the drainage map is based on contours of the land, lay of the land, because that's the way stormwater is actually collected and how you appropriate the costs. Capacity is if they make an improvement to a channel or facility, it's based on the 100-year flow that facility would provide, and if they've improved it to a 100-year flow, then there's additional capacity from the existing channel. That can be portioned out over a 12-year term. Now, the cost share is based on what another development comes along, what their share of that capacity they would use up. And again, we've developed a pre-established flow for small units. I'm going to go into that just a little bit. This is established for ag and estates, single-family residence, multifamily, and then commercial and other. If they don't provide a drainage report or a category where they're not one required, then this would apply. Basically, it's a percent of the area, their area against the total area of the basin, time a factor, and these factors are basically proportioned based on C factors. We have a chart of what we use for figuring runoff in the city of Enid, and we have established C factors, and these are basically just proportional. So Agri States has a proportional C factor of 0.57. and commercial has factor 0.107. So it's a way to, on these smaller lots, to proportion those out without requiring a major drainage report. Water special conditions. Again, the special conditions here are that water typically in roadways, we established that the boundary for a water line should be halfway to the next line of comparable size. If you're doing an arterial street to the 16-inch line, it would be to the next arterial street, generally 16-inch line, or up to a half mile. So half mile is the limit, which typically works if they're on arterial streets. Can be, we have areas where we have streets that are closer together and it could be smaller, but that would be the typical pattern. Post-development would have to provide their area, which is a pretty figure, and their meter size when they come in after the fact. And then the fee would be based on half of the cost of the improvement would be assessed based on the area, and half the cost based on the meter size. Helps I think you fill that out. Transportation, special condition for transportation. Transportation is a little bit more difficult to assess. But what we've developed is proposed to assess roadway improvements based on easels, which are equivalent single axle load. Again, when you have development occurs, subdivision, or a site plan, it will require traffic analysis, which will determine basically the amount of traffic they're generating and the amount of trucks and vehicles and the amount of axle load that would place on the road system. So the developer provide that for the original study. We determine the capacity of the improvement. They make a road improvement, then there'd be a certain capacity or load equivalent that would be available on that road, and then it'd be portioned out when future developments occur, when post-developers occur, future development. They'd have to provide a report setting out their load or equivalent single axle load annually, and the ADT, which is basically what they would generate on an annual basis. We compare them on an annual basis. Fees based for roads based on the load. If there's a signalization involved, the signalization would be based on traffic. It's not really based, signals aren't really based on load, they're based on the amount of traffic that flows through. What we haven't accomplished yet is to pre-establish impact for small sites such as single-family residence. That is still being worked on right now. It would require some impact study to set that out, but we will look to bring back some analysis to provide a system where small units of single-family residence could be assessed without requiring a transportation impact study. Still working that issue. That covers the changes and what we were doing on the capital recovery and how we plan to proceed with that ordinance. I do have a couple examples if you would like me to go through those.
Yeah, I think it might be helpful.
Okay, very good. First, this is an example of a capital recovery on a road improvement, and one planned out there, so we've used it for a basis. Anticipates a mile and a half of industrial road improvement, $2.5 million cost. Also anticipates the original development site, just for the example, is laid out as a heavy trucking unit, and our analysis would estimate that at 22,750 equivalent single axle loads annually, and we're saying about 160 acres for that site. And we've identified what we think be considered for some post-development sites. Say a light trucking unit may develop on there. We would see those that usually develop about 12 acres, and for this example, we're estimating about 11,700 easels or axle loads annually from that site. And then we actually threw in what would be a small commercial unit that may occur. They take up a couple acres. They have a lot lower truck units, a lot lower load, but they do have a lot of vehicle load, heavier vehicle load. So the equivalent load is estimated about 7,700 units. This is an example of a location. Here we're showing probably working on 66th Street, mile and a half. An example of a heavy truck development site, about 160 acres. And we've located what could be considered, for an example, a light trucking site, which is, I think, about 12 acres, and then a commercial site which may develop somewhere along there of a couple acres.
How do we inform potential buyers of this fee? I mean, is it one of those, do we file anything of record that would show up in a title search, or?
Yes, we do. We
Okay.
record it.
Yes, there is, and there are two notices. One, when we do the application, which is just basically that it's coming on board, and then one, when the dollars are done, we provide a notice to all, this, didn't point out, this is the, would be defined as the area of impact, or the beneficial area,
Okay.
basin boundary, we're gonna call it. And there's no, all the property owners are notified in that basin of, at two times, one's when it's being developed, and one when they put it improved, and got the cost numbers, but before you as a commission have set those dollars in place. So they have about a 30-minute period, days that they can.
Are these costs in place now, Robert?
Excuse me?
Are these costs in place now?
This is just an example. There are no costs in here. This is just an example of a capital recovery that could be put in place. This one is not in place. It's just an example of what could happen.
Robert?
Yes, sir.
Who's going to actually calculate these post-development fees, and who's going to collect them?
Well, the fees set by the ordinance, the post-development would provide, they'd have to provide an engineer's report that actually would set out the impact. In this case, they'd provide a engineer's report, a traffic impact study that would identify their amount of truckloads, type of trucks, amount of axle loads, and amount of vehicles that they would apply. So so they provide that information, and then you just take that times the fee that's in the final report, and that's the fee. Similar to what we do on stormwater management, on stormwater impacts.
So engineering calculates the fee, and then they pay
Our
the fee in the
engineering
city.
department.
Right.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and who collects it?
It's collected at the time of a permit that's issued. So when a permit is issued, or a plat is filed, then and part of the permit fee is, these fees are assessed as part of the permit. Building permit,
The city clerk
site plan
collects it.
approval.
Okay.
Yeah, they're collected at the
Past
city clerk's
tax.
office. But typically they're set, they're established by the engineering, and they're attached to the permit when the contractor comes in for his construction permit, site plan permit, et cetera. Okay?
Did you have one slide that said we have 100 years worth of information? What was 100 year?
Now, I had a slide that said that stormwater impact was based on a 100-year storm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a design storm.
Not 100 years ago, okay.
Right. Just- So in this example, again, remember the project cost estimated $2.5 million. The developer share would be estimated based on that actual count of $224,000, a little over that. Post-development light truck, based on their load count, would be estimated $115,000. And then that commercial unit, about 2 acres, would have an impact of about a little over $76,000 based on this example of the road system of the 2.5 million. Any questions on that example? I have another example on sanitary sewer, and this is actually a sanitary sewer that was approved and is in place, and has been done. So we have actual information. This is based on the actual capital recovery. It was a 3,900 foot 12-inch sanitary sewer line. The boundary was about just over 368 acres. The capacity being provided was just over 558 gallons per minute. The cost here was $454,000 to $43.15. There was no development site here involved. This was built by city, so it was no original development site, so it's city sponsored. So all the costs can be assessed back. We have had a development site, we'll call it an auto repair site, about 5 acres, and their flow rate off of that is 15 gallons per minute. For an example, I've thrown in a subdivision, say 100-acre subdivision develops 380 units. That's their projection based on the residential flow of each lot is 250 gallons per minute. And for an example, I've thrown in a single-family resident, and their impact is at 0.66 gallons per minute. This is, you may recall this is a sanitary sewer that's being placed. This is Garland Road on the map in just to the right, and US 412 to the north to location. Sewer line was extended from existing sewer line west about a little about 3/4 of a mile. The yellow line here is the sanitary sewer boundary that can be served by that line. And for reference, I've identified an area where we have actually an auto repair shop developed. And also, just for example, I've estimated this residential zone area here would develop, with a 100 acres and 380 residential units. Again, the line cost, $454,000, a little bit. So the project cost, again, a little $454,000. This would calculate to about $813.17 per gallon per minute of additional capacity. Auto shop uses 15 gallons per minute of that, and that comes at about 12,000 on 197. Residential subdivision would use substantial part of it. Their share would be at about a little over $203,000 of the cost. Single family resident cost would be about $536.69.
Robert, back up just there to the map again. I'm trying to figure out something now. We're talking about a sewer line that extended on west of Garland, right?
Right. Is that?
But all of these developments you're talking about are back on the existing line, right?
No. The sewer line, the existing line is shown just outside the boundary in the dashed line here. This green line here is the new line.
Okay.
So this development is tied to the new line. This development, which is just a projection, it's just an example, would tie to, would make use of the new line.
So if that gets, let's say someone wants to go outside the yellow line at the bottom,
Down here?
can that whole thing be shifted down where it would work on that same line?
Okay. Here, if a development occurs down below the basin and they use this system, they'd pay their proportional share. Now, if they develop here and use another system, then they're not anticipated to be in this basin. This area here is anticipated to be served by the existing lines over here. So they're not anticipated to be in this basin.
Yeah,
So-
but we don't know 5 years from now what could happen, that's right.
Right, but if they do, if for some reason, this line is the best guess, but if this line gets moved south, the development here would pay same as being in the basin.
Okay.
That make sense?
They tie in and use it, they pay.
They have to use it, you pay.
Didn't we approve about $875,000 or $750,000 for installing the water, sewer, and so forth?
The improvement was done in budget. I think it's a little over this amount, but we actually, in construction, actually had some cost savings and we came in a little bit under. But I think at time there was discussion about $700,000 for the improvement.
Have
We
we
actually were completed it for the 454.
We've spent that instead of the 775.
Right.
Will we spend more than the 454?
No, this project is complete.
What do we do with the money that's left over?
Well, I think it stays in the fund.
I'm sure we spent
But it wasn't budgeted at the projection is 700,000, I think, but it wasn't budgeted at 700,000. I think it's budgeted at about 500,000. And that money that's in the sanitary sewer fund, it stays in the sanitary sewer fund.
We've actually acted like the developer here. We paid for the line, and so now when development comes, using that line, we're going to collect back a pro rata share based on the calculation Robert's talking about.
Right.
Now, Robert, if I understand right, you said that yellow line is the area of folks that, what
This
is
is
the yellow
boundary,
line?
this
mean?
is the area of impact.
Okay.
Uh,
But if they're
that's-
outside the area of impact, that's what Commissioner Tim was asking,
If
and they could still use that sewer line, we're still going to use
they still
the same
they would
formula
have
to get a
if
pro
you
rata
use- If you
share.
use this system, you pay your proportional share, yes.
What else do we have to do in that yellow box?
Well, this area may develop in the future, this whole area, there's nothing for us to do, except if a development occurs,
We tie on to
collect a
the-
fee, and collect a fee. And since we have no initial developer, there's no one to pay, we just collect the fee. So, and that's occurred, there's been development here,
Mhm.
and they have paid their fee. And probably glad to have the sewer line.
I got that confused with a hotel at one time.
Okay?
Not gonna
What
be-
is this street back here on this end?
This is,
Wheat
this
Ridge.
end is Wheat Ridge.
Wheat Ridge.
Where's the well site? Is that where the 100 is?
The well site, sir,
There's a well site on there.
there's well, the aerial shows, looks like a well site right in the center in here.
Is that the edge of city limits also, Wheat Ridge?
No, it extends a
goes
little
to
bit
IMO.
beyond that, I think.
I think it
It goes to
IMO.
IMO.
Well, I was asking, would those housing additions ever get on city sewer?
They, I think certainly is, I think if this would develop and the sewer line get extended over here, then they would be the opportunity for them to connect, yes, sir. And they would pay their proportional share if that was the case. The only thing that prevents them from connecting is getting a line to that distance and paying a fee.
They would be out the expense of getting across the road on their own then, or?
Yep, could be another capital recovery. Or unless it's fully funded by, the city could do it as a capital recovery. There's options there, but that's the standards in place. What this provides for is provide for getting these improvements such as we have here, which provides for this area to develop at a rapid rate. And we've got the proper size line in there. They didn't just size it for their use, it's sized it for them. Which brings me to the, I went through the cost figure share. Brings me to the last slide, which just advantages capital recovery and what we do it. And basically plans for growth and allows you to provide for getting the proper infrastructure in there, full-size infrastructure, not reduces duplication. And it allows for you to recover your investment or provides incentive for developers to cover their investment if they participate. And also for the public, or the ones who want to use it, they pay when they use. It's not assessed, that's where you pay in advance, you pay when you use.
So our next step would be to put this into an ordinance to bring to you, if you
Yeah,
like it.
Yes,
We could probably do that maybe even by next time, by 2/23 or as soon as possible.
Sure.
What I like about that though is, a lot of times you can't sell land that doesn't have sewer on it, and they won't buy the land because the city won't, they won't bring it to them where it costs them $500,000 to get it across the road. It limits people from coming in. When you having that, it just opens it up so well for housing additions or businesses or whatever, because that's already,
Right,
you just like say, you're paying for your part.
right, right.
I think it's a great way of developing or
Makes
developing.
sense.
Yeah, and I think it plans for that, and allows you to
Works for me.
develop, and you only pay when you use, when you need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Item 5, discuss future study session topics.
Hey, that next item I put on there because I want to talk about a few items coming up, and then I also wanted to see, you guys may have some items that you want to talk about in the future or would like us to prepare some information for. So let me tell you the items that we have tentatively right now coming forward, and then if you have any ideas or thoughts or things that you want to see, it'd be a good time to talk about it. On 2/23, which is our next meeting, which is on Thursday because of the President's Day holiday, I'm tracking that we're going to have a Central National Bank Center financial update. And I'm also tracking right now that we'll have an ETN update if we're still on track. If we're not, we'll adjust. We also have potentially, we want to update you in the near future, either on 2/23 or probably the first meeting in March on the CIP program, where we're at the budgeted programs for this year on what the status update is. For instance, the Willow Roads, which I think you're pretty well aware of Willow Road is, but the other things we have. I know that we also, I'm tracking that we may want to, at one of the meetings in March, discuss some possible charter amendments. And I don't know, Commissioner Brownlee, if you want to talk about that a moment, or it's just an idea that if you have any of those, bring them. I think we have some of them already. We'll discuss them down here as soon as we're ready, either on 3/7 or the next meeting, I think is 3/21. And that's really what I have right now. So at some point, we'll start updating you again on Call Lake. We know we had our first meeting on that. So that'll also be a future study session topic on a regular basis, probably starting in March. So are there other items that you would like to see us talk about or that you would like to discuss at future study sessions? That you-
Well, by the time we get through March, we'll be working on the budget for next fiscal year.
It's true. So clearly we have some budget meetings coming up as well.
Yes.
I would like to see a kind of an update at a high level, I guess, on the options for doing some road improvement within the community.
Okay.
And we've talked about, we've floated the idea of a bond proposal. I've heard several numbers about what it would cost to make a significant impact on the streets and roads. It might be nice to visit that again.
Okay.
At some point, maybe late March or April. It'd be nice to do it before the budget. We're not going to have the money, but
Okay. We'll look at that in the March-April timeframe.
Gotta eat an elephant.
We're part of the Oklahoma economy.
Is there anything else? Do you think, if there is any, at any time, feel free to let me know. And that's really all that item was.
Sounds good. We're adjourned. We'll meet upstairs at 6:30.
Thank you for joining us for the Enid City Commission study session. If you have any questions or comments, visit our website at enid.org.